Alexander von Kluck kept marching west on September 4, 1914, and Paris fell before the leaves had finished turning. The commander of the German First Army, the outermost formation on the Great Wheel through Belgium and northern France, had spent 3 days weighing whether to obey the letter of a plan drafted for a war that no longer resembled the one he was fighting. The plan, as Helmuth von Moltke the Younger had modified it, called for the right wing to sweep west and south of Paris and press the French armies back against their own eastern fortresses. Kluck's men had marched from the Belgian frontier in a month. They had outrun their railheads. Their horses were foundering, and infantry corps were covering 30 kilometers a day on short rations, while Moltke issued directives from Luxembourg, hundreds of kilometers away, over wireless links that failed as often as they worked. In our history, Kluck turned. Between August 30 and September 3, he swung southeast to pursue Charles Lannesac's Fifth Army, passing east of Paris and drawing his exposed right flank across the front of the capital, where Joseph Gallieni, military governor since August 26, saw it and told Joseph Joffre what he had seen. That flank became the Marne. In this alternate timeline exploration, we examine what could have happened and why the real history unfolded differently. Suppose Kluck holds the outer arc. Suppose his First Army stays west, facing Paris rather than sliding past it. On the morning of September 5th, Gallieni's aviators go up over Senlis and Dammartine, looking for a marching column crossing their front. They find a wall of German corps, halted and facing the city. There is no flank, and what Joffre does not yet understand, what will take him another 2 weeks to accept, is that the counterattack he has been assembling for a fortnight now has nothing to strike. The French Sixth Army, under Michel-Joseph Maunoury, had been forming near Paris precisely to fall on an exposed German right. It is a formation built for an opportunity that never arrives. Joffre, who had relieved Lannesac and given the Fifth Army to Louis-Franchet d'Esperey on September 3rd, orders the retreat continued. The armies fall back past the Marne, then past the Seine. Sir John French, commanding a British expeditionary force of 4 to 5 divisions, had been shaken badly at Mons and Le Cateau and had already been contemplating a withdrawal behind the Seine to refit. What held him in line in our history was Joffre's promise of a general offensive. Without it, he does what a commander of a small expeditionary force does when the Allied army beside him is falling back and no counterstroke is coming. He protects his lines of communication. The BEF slips southwest toward the ports. It is not a betrayal, and the British are careful to insist it is not. It is arithmetic. 5 divisions do not stand in a ring that is closing. The retreat has no natural end. That is the thing the maps of 1914 do not show. Every river the French cross is a river the Germans cross a day later. The forts at Liège had fallen in 11 days. Namur had fallen in 4. Belgian concrete, poured in the 1880s and 1890s, had proved to be nothing against German 42-centimeter howitzers and the Austrian 30.5s loaned to the effort. Everyone in Europe knew this by September. The French had modernized the fortress belt around Paris, and it was better than Namur. It was not different in kind. The siege train comes west by rail as far as the sabotage network allows, then by traction engine over roads never built for it. A process measured in weeks rather than days. German engineers begin the methodical reduction of the northeastern forts, working outward from the observation the guns require. Kluck's infantry digs in around the ring, not to storm the city, but to hold it. The word the German staff uses is einschließen, to enclose. Gallieni had 80,000 men and a city of nearly 3 million. He fights well. Fort by fort, the suburbs cost the Germans more than the Belgian forts had, and the German casualty returns for October 1914 are the heaviest of the campaign. But the guns keep coming forward, and behind them, the news from Antwerp is bad. The consequences of that would take the rest of the autumn to reveal themselves. But first, we have to understand what was happening inside the ring. Paris does not starve. Paris runs down. The distinction matters, and it is the reason the siege ends in negotiation rather than collapse. With the northern rail approaches cut, the city lives on the contents of its warehouses and whatever comes up from the south along roads the German cavalry can reach. Bread is rationed in the second week. Coal is rationed before the bread. The Belgian field army, which had fallen back on the fortress of Antwerp rather than surrender in August, is reduced in the same weeks, and the divisions freed by its fall come south by rail. There is no reserve left in France to meet them, because Joffre's reserve was Maunery's army, and Maunery's army is inside the ring or falling back beyond it. Gallieni is not defeated in the field. He is subtracted from the war by a calendar. The government had left Paris on September 2nd before any of this, before the Marne was fought in our history, before the ring closed in this one. Raymond Poincaré and René Viviani went with it to Bordeaux, and there they discover what it means to be a government of a rump. Poincaré insists on continued resistance from the Loire and the south. He is not posturing, the argument for it is real, and the French army in the field, badly hurt, is not destroyed. But Viviani's cabinet fractures over a single question that no one can answer with confidence. Can the army survive another winter campaign without its capital, without Bry's iron, without the northern industrial departments, and without a British army that has fallen back on Le Havre? In late October, Joffre reports his effective strength honestly. It is the first time he has done so. That report, more than any German gun, ends the debate. Berlin wants the West closed before it turns east, and a Germany in a hurry offers terms that a Germany with time would not. They are harder than 1871 and softer than what 4 more years would have produced. An indemnity, the Bry-Longwy Iron Basin, occupation of the northern departments pending payment, and French neutrality for the duration. There is no Alsace question reopened, because Alsace is already German. There is no dismemberment, because the German staff does not want a France that must be garrisoned. The armistice is signed in November 1914. Britain is not party to it. Its army has come home intact. Its fleet has not been beaten and will not be. It remains at war with a power it can blockade and cannot reach. And then comes the decision that reorders the continent. Germany begins moving the bulk of its western armies east by rail. A redeployment on a scale no general staff has ever attempted, and one that consumes the winter. Paul von Hindenburg and Erich Ludendorff, who had destroyed Alexander Samsonov's Second Army at Tannenberg between August 26 and 30 with the forces they had, and who had begged for more, now receive corps by the dozen. Austria-Hungary is the reason the timetable matters. Konrad von Hötzendorf's armies had lost Lemberg on September 3 and had been retreating ever since. In this timeline, they are propped up, rather than rescued, reinforced enough to hold a line in the Carpathians, and thereby made permanently dependent. Vienna will spend the rest of its existence as the junior partner of a Germany that no longer needs it. Moltke is relieved in any case. Erich von Falkenhayn takes the general staff in September 1914, as he did in our history, though for different reasons. A victorious army still requires a chief who can organize 1,000 trains. What a short war leaves behind is not peace. It is an arrangement. A German empire stands dominant from the Meuse to the Vistula, undefeated, unreformed, its general staff more powerful in Berlin than the Reichstag, and confident that the plan worked because the plan was right. A France is humiliated and impoverished, but its institutions survive, its republic survives, and the generation that in our history was fed into Verdun and the Somme comes home in 1915 to a country that has lost a war rather than a demographic future. Britain, its army whole and its purpose unfulfilled, settles into a blockade that will define the next 20 years. And Russia faces, in the spring of 1915, the full weight of an army that in our timeline it never met alone. The trenches from the Channel to Switzerland are not dug. The shells of 1916 are not fired. The millions of dead of 1916 and 1917 are alive, and they know only that they lost quickly. Kluck's turn in the end was not a blunder. He turned because Lanrezac's army was in front of him and unbeaten, because his flank guard was thin, because Moltke was 600 kilometers away, and because the enemy you can see has always weighed more than the plan you were handed. He was, by the standards of every war college in Europe, correct. It cost Germany the campaign, and it may have cost Germany far less than winning it would have.